Yo, what's up, boys? It's Betta-ah here with an awesome cheat sheet website that I came across on Reddit for Path of Exile 2, and shout out to Wafu Manifold for his hard work putting the website together, as it's super helpful. This video is to share with you lots of information so you can go into early access having some extra knowledge, which is perfect for new, returning, or even current Path of Exile 1 players, and hopefully it does end up helping you out. Should you not want to watch the entire video of me going through the information or want to refer to it at a later stage, you can find the website's link down below in the description. Alright, so first things first, as he has stipulated over here, that the content on this page is compiled from various sources and it can change at any time, and the information may be different when early access does launch later on today, and it can be considered potentially unreliable. So should you be a bit confused about something, or maybe you know that something is not correct, just do double check on the source when you are in doubt, obviously. Alright, some useful links and tools over here that I have been using myself as well, and many other people, is Path of Exile 2's database. Over here, what you can find is all of the different items that you can expect to find in Path of Exile 2, alongside with some uniques and the currency. And then alongside that is the character class ascendancy, the passive skill tree, which I'll get to in a little bit, and then dual specialization along with keystones, which can also be found in the passive tree, and then obviously your classes, and then your skill gems, support gems, and your spirit gems as well. And then alongside with that is just a little bit of extra information on the acts. Obviously, we only get Act 1 until 3, and then you have to redo Act 1 until 3 in Cruel. For the second website is Path of Exile 2's wiki. Over here, you can find out any information that you are looking for. So, say for instance, I'm interested in block over here in the top right hand corner underneath the search bar. You can just type in block, hit enter. It'll take you to all of the information about block. Obviously, this website is still under construction by the community and many other members in that, so there isn't a lot of information available at the moment. However, as early access does progress in that, more and more information will become available on the website. So should you be unsure about something, or maybe you just want a little bit of extra information in that, please do make use of this website. It will be very helpful for you to understand things much clearer. For the third website is Filter Blade's loot filter in that. Obviously, NeverSync cannot establish a proper loot filter in that now, as we are going into early access in that, as he does need the relevant data, experience, and time to work on it. And over here, he expects a customizable filter after around about 2 to 8 weeks. So for the time being, we will just have to suffer having a lot of items dropping in that. For the fourth website is obviously Path of Exile's trade website. Over here in this website, there will be a drop down over here for Path of Exile 2 specifically. And then through this website, what makes it super valuable is, say for instance, you are looking for a specific item that's got like laugh and 3 resistances, or even like some damage modifiers that you're interested in like crafting on yourself and that, then you can use this website yourself to find them out. For the fifth website over here is a poe2skills.com. With this website, you can select whichever skill gem you are interested in using on early access and that. So say for instance, I'm interested in using Arc, then you can just type in Arc or whichever one you're interested in, and then you can just click on it. And then all 5 of these are your support gems. So then you can just add in whichever support gems you are interested in pretty much using in that. And then this way you can pre-plan your skills and that, just to give you a little bit of extra insight and that on what you are basically planning to do and how you would like to progress with your character and that. This is obviously subject to change. For the sixth website is the PoE2 skill tree. Over here, we've got the actual skill tree for early access and that. However, many of the nodes currently aren't available. And of course, you can select which ascendancy you are interested in using. And then alongside that, you can also highlight the keystones on the tree and the notables along with all of the smalls. Just do note that all of these red nodes are currently not available in that, but for the time being, this will just help you plan your passive tree on your basic pathing, which you would like to take, and just to give you a little bit of extra insight. That way, you're not going in 100% blind and you have a basic idea of what you want to aim for and where you want to path to. All right, moving on to the game's classes and the ascendancies. So there are 12 character classes in total for Path of Exile 2. However, now going into early access and that we only have 6 of them available. But as early access does advance and time goes by, they will be adding in some extra ones. And then by the time release comes by, we'll have all 12 to have been tested and that. So don't worry about the fact that there's only 6 of them, because they will be releasing more and more as time does pass. All right, so each class has got 3 ascendancy specializations, and each attribute combination has 2 unique classes. For instance, Warrior and Marauder is for pure strength, but we'll get down to that in a little bit. And then classes are just the starting points. Any class can use any skill gem or item if they meet the requirements. So the possibilities are endless on which different types of builds you can make in that. So you don't have to worry about having to start a specific class in that. And then obviously classes differ in the starting position on the passive skill tree, the attributes, your quest rewards, and obviously the available ascendancy specializations that you have access to. For your ascendancies, you will have a maximum of 8 ascendancy points, which can be spent in the tree. And in order to obtain these, you will have to do the trial of these Sekhemas or trial of the Chaos Guard, and that basically this works the same way as Lab does in PoE 1. However, it's going to be much more challenging. A really awesome thing is that ascendancy skills can be supported by support gems as well, so this can make for some really powerful combos. And then along with that, the ascendancy skills also level up based on your character's level. So the higher level that you get, the more damage output you can gain from the ascendancy specific skills as well. And currently, you will be unable to switch between any of your ascendancies. So please do choose wisely. And should you allocate maybe a incorrect point on your selective ascendancy that you have chosen, then you will still be able to respec those. And then for Warrior, the attribute focus is Strength, and then the ascendancies that you can choose is Titan and Warbringer. Marauder is Strength, which is not currently available. The same goes for Huntress and Shadow and Druid and Templar. As I did mention, these will be added at a later stage. And then Sorceress is Intelligence with Stormweaver and Chronomancer ascendancies. And then the Witch, once again, is Intelligence with Infernalist and Blood Mage. And then we also have the Ranger, where you have access to Betta-ah or Pathfinder. And then the Mercenary, which is a hybrid of Strength and Dexterity, where you can go Witch Hunter or Gemling Legionnaire. And then the Monk is also a hybrid with Dexterity slash Intelligence, where you can go Invoker or Acolyte of Chayula. Remember that you can check out these ascendancies and that through the database or through the skill tree that are mentioned earlier in the video. Okay, so now moving on to the basic mechanics. Obviously, this is not all of them and that. However, this is majority of them, and I'm just going to go through them real quickly. So, life is the main health source, obviously, and when you reach 0 health, you will die, and then you'll be resurrected at a checkpoint or in town, and you'll have to go back to where you were. Per level, you'll be gaining 12 to maximum life, and then life can be recovered through flasks, regeneration, or life leech, or recoup as well. Low life is considered to be 35% or less of maximum life. It is no longer 50% how it was back in Path of Exile 1. And then obviously full life is 100% or more of your maximum life. And then for Energy Shield, it just acts as an additional hit pool, just like Laugh. It takes damage before Laugh by default, and then it recharges at 12.5% per second after not taking damage for 4 seconds. It also takes double damage from Chaos damage, which is quite hectic. And in PoE 1, it never used to be like this, so it'll be pretty interesting to see how many enemies end up dealing chaos damage and how bad it will actually be, or I actually don't think it's going to be that bad. And then obviously it is also bypassed by bleeding and poison damage. So basically what happens is all bleeding and poison damage will directly affect your health pool and not your energy shield. But I have found out that if you go chaos inoculation through the skill tree, then you'll be immune to chaos damage, bleeding, and poison damage as well, which I think is absolutely absurd. And then Energy Shield also provides 50% chance to avoid stuns while your Energy Shield is not depleted, just to help you to not be stun locked. In terms of attributes, we have 3 primary attributes, namely Strength, which gives 2 to maximum life per point, Dexterity, which gives 5 accuracy rating per point, and then Intelligence, which gives 2 maximum mana per point. Attributes are very, very important in the game as they are required to equip items and to use gems and that. And all characters start with 15 of their primary attributes and 7 of the others. So support gems can also add +5 to attribute requirements based on their color, relative to red being strength, green being dexterity, and blue being intelligence as well. Spirit is a resource that's used to maintain persistent effects such as auras, permanent minions, and to trigger meta gems. And there is no base spirit pool to start off with. This can only be gained through progression and scepters, and I believe also the one ascendancy for witch. And then it also has fixed reservation costs, which is typically between 30 to 120 spirit per effect, being the minions or the auras or even triggering the said meta gems. And then it cannot be recovered or regenerated like other resources. And the effects will also remain active until they have been manually disabled. So you don't have to worry about having to keep on using them and that. And then, of course, spirit reservation can be reduced through passives and other modifiers. For elemental resistance, they reduce incoming damage, which is really, really, really good defensive wise for any character and that. This applies to fire, cold, lightning, and then chaos damage, which is separate from the 3 initial elements. And the default value is 0%, meaning there's no effect on damage taken. Your maximum resistance is capped at 75% by default, but it can be increased by up to 90%, which is the hard cap, the same as Path of Exile 1, through special modifiers such as the skill tree or maybe even items and so forth. And that we don't know yet, and we'll have to find out what items there are for that. And then obviously negative resistances causes you to take increased damage, which is really, really bad. So capping out your resistances and that as you progress and get into the end game is super important. You must always check your resistances and make sure that you are as close to the 75% cap as possible. And then, of course, completing each act will permanently reduce all resistances by 10% up to a negative 60% total. So from Act 1 until 3, that's negative 30%. And then you'll have to do Acts 1 until 3 in Cruel again, which will be another negative 30%. For resistance penetration, it reduces the target's effective resistance and is really, really, really good in increasing the overall damage that you can do. But this is also really bad for your character should you have reduced resistance, which is obviously through curses and or modifiers while you are doing maps. And it also has no effect once your resistances is 0% or lower. For critical hits, they deal bonus damage based on the extra critical damage bonus that you have got. So each hit rolls against critical strike chance to determine if it crits, and I believe crit can still go up to 100% chance. However, it's more so effective if you're at around about 70% or so, because investing too much into crit chance can end up hurting you. And at the end of the day, it's actually better to get the additional critical damage so you can deal even more damage. And your base critical damage bonus is set to 100%, which deals double damage. And obviously, the higher you scale this, the more damage output you will gain from it. And it can be increased through modifiers and gear, and I believe also support gems as well. And also, don't forget, there is also the one Ascendancy, which is very, very good for crits too. Accuracy determines hit chance against evasive targets, while evasion provides chance to avoid projectiles and strikes, which is really, really, really good. So basically, when you evade a enemy's hits and that, you will not take damage from it. Accuracy rating is always required for attacks and not for spells, because spells will always hit. They have got nothing to do with accuracy in that. So if you are attack based in that, you will have to make sure that your accuracy rating is at least above 90%. Otherwise, if you end up missing your hits in that, then you're not dealing damage. And at the end of the day, that's just a really bad thing. Your evade chance cannot exceed 95%, and it uses an entropy system to guarantee hits after enough evades and that. So basically, this is the same thing as diminishing returns. So if you're evading and not being hit by hits and that, diminishing returns basically kicks in, I'm guessing, and then you're guaranteed to end up getting hits and that, which is actually really cool. Evasion obviously only works against projectiles and strikes and not area damage, so do beware of area damage should you be stacking up evasion rating. And then distance increases evasion chance against projectiles and decreases accuracy as well. And then evaded hits prevent all damage and effects, which is why evasion is so good. But sometimes it can also be really bad, because say for instance you don't have armor and that, and you get hit by a really, really hard physical hit, then you will end up dying to it. Critical hits that aren't evaded also get a second chance to be evaded and downgraded to non-crits, which is super powerful. I believe we never had this in Path of Exile 1, so this is going to be really, really interesting to play around with evasion and that. And it can be bypassed by always hits or cannot evade modifiers as well. Moving on to charges, there are three types of charges that you can gain, which is endurance charges. This is spent by defensive abilities, frenzy charges for mobility, and I believe also rain of arrows can use frenzy charges as well. And maybe some other skills will be able to, not too sure on the other charges. And then power charges is spent by utility abilities as well. In Path of Exile 1, the charges used to give like damage reduction and extra damage and extra critical strike chance and that, whereas now we no longer gain those inherited bonuses, and they are used for specific abilities. For damage conversion, it will change one damage type into another. So say for instance, you get a conversion modifier whereby you convert 25% of your physical damage to fire damage. That means 25% of your overall physical damage will be transferred to fire damage, and this will only apply to hit damage and not damage over time, obviously. Gained as extra adds damage without removing the original damage as well. Converted to replaces the original damage type. That means that you don't keep the original damage in that, obviously. And then converted damage only scales with the modifiers to the new type. Multiple conversions are processed in sequence as well. This is so you can multiplicatively add damage in that. And then skill conversion takes priority over item and passive conversion. This is really, really interesting. I never knew that either. Nice. And if total conversion exceeds 100%, values are scaled down to 100%. So if you are converting your damage to another damage type and that, just make sure that you don't go over the 100% threshold. Otherwise, you are just wasting. For block, it will be coming soon. However, you can go over to the PoE2 wiki and check out block. This is why I used it as a reference. Moving on to Leech, it will recover your resources such as life, mana, or energy shield over time based on the hit damage dealt. It only works with hit damage and not damage over time, and the amount leeched is based on damage dealt after mitigation. The base leech duration is 1 second, so you can recover your life mana or energy shield really quickly instead of it being over 4 seconds in PoE 1. I think it used to be. I could be wrong on this. And then multiple leech instances do not stack, and only the highest instance applies. So basically, if you are hitting consecutively, like really quickly, and dealing like different types of damage, and that only the highest damage will be considered for the leech. And then recovery can be improved by resource recovery rate modifiers. This is obviously going to be through support gems and the skill tree and so forth. We're not 100% sure on where else we'll get it from, but we'll get that information soon. And then the equation for the final leech amounts can be used over here. I think this could change, it probably will, but just a quick side note over here for all equations and that, if you are interested in them and that, on the Path of Exile 2 wiki, underneath whatever you're interested in, like Leech or so forth, and that there will be a proper calculation and that stuff that you can use when it does become available. And notable mechanics for Leech is the Volpact Keystone, which makes your Life Leech instant but prevents Life Loss usage. And some items like the Couture of Crimson allows Leech to overflow maximum life. I believe this is a body armor. All right, moving on to Itemization. So items will have implicit and explicit modifiers. Each modifier adds one or more stats to the item. And in game, if you press Alt on the item while hovering on it, you will see the modifier details. And modifiers can have tags such as fire, physical, life, lightning, cold, and so forth, and that. And that will give you a basic idea of what they modify. So all of this data will be available on the PoE2 database website, and it will also be available on the wiki too. So for implicit modifiers, they will always appear above the separator line, so they'll always be the topmost modifier, and these are determined by the base item type. For example, a topaz ring will give you percent to lightning resistance as it's an implicit, and most crafting currencies will not affect implicit modifiers. However, certain advanced crafting currencies may modify them, such as catalysts and that, but we'll get to that in a little bit. So for explicit modifiers, which is affixes, they will all appear below the separator line on an item. They are usually added, removed, or modified through different crafting currencies, and they come in two different types, which is prefixes. This usually affects base stats like armor, damage, life, and mana, and so forth. And then your suffixes is usually going to be stats like resistances or attributes. So you have got 4 base item rarities, which is normal items, which will have no modifiers. Magic items can have up to 1 prefix and 1 suffix. And then rare items will have up to 3 prefixes and 3 suffixes. And then your unique items have got fixed modifiers, which cannot be changed in that. Only the roles will be different. So each of the explicit modifiers belongs to a specific tier. This is for both prefixes, suffixes, alongside with the unique items as well. So higher tiers will be lower stat values, and the lower tier will be a higher value. So this is inverted for Path of Exile 2. In Path of Exile 1, obviously the higher tier, the higher the roll will be. But in Path of Exile 2, instead, the lower the tier, the higher the roll will be, obviously. And higher tier modifiers will require higher item levels to spawn, the same way in Path of Exile 1 that it used to work. Modifiers have got spawn weights that determine their probability to appear. So if a spawn weight of a modifier is 100, the total sum of the weights of all spawnable modifiers is going to be 10,000. Then the modifier has got a 100 in 10,000%, which is a 1% chance to spawn on an item when a new modifier is rolled. This is only an example, obviously. So when an item is identified or when using an exalted orb, this is like the basic ranges. Obviously, they are different in that. The total mod pool is increased by the item base type and the tags that can roll on the item. And then the item level also determines available modifiers. So higher levels allow for higher tier modifiers, obviously. In terms of these modifiers, only one modifier from each family can exist on an item. So for an example, percent increased fire damage on a wand and percent increased lightning damage on a wand cannot be rolled together as they belong to the same family. For your mod weights and crafting, many crafting currencies can be understood as transformations. As an example, if you're using a greater essence of the body, which upgrades a magic item to a rare item with a guaranteed life modifier, this currency can be used as setting all of the spawn weights of the modifiers that do not have a life tag to 0 and then applying a regal orb. Another example will be Omen of the Sinistral Exaltation, which forces an exalted orb to only add prefix modifiers. So say for instance, you've got really good suffixes and that's, or maybe just like 2 of them or so forth, and you only want to add a prefix and not a additional suffix, and that this can be used to force that on instead of just applying a normal exalted orb, which will normally add either a prefix or a suffix. In Path of Exile 2, we have got item tiers, which is now new, and monsters may drop items of 5 different tiers. An item of a higher tier prevents low tier modifiers from rolling on it, resulting in a higher chance of a good item. So this way, we are able to drop more relevant and like really good items in that. So we're able to upgrade our characters in that. And item tiers only affect the ground loot. They have got 0 effect on crafting. For your basic crafting currencies, you've got the Orb of Transmutation, which upgrades a normal item into a magic item with 1 modifier. An Orb of Augmentation adds a random modifier to a magic item, so then you end up having 2 total modifiers. An Orb of Alchemy upgrades a normal item to a rare item with at least 4 modifiers. And then a Orb of Chance can only be used on normal items, which will randomly transform it into being a magic, rare, or unique item if it's the correct base for it to be transferred into a unique item. And then a Regal can only be used on magic items, which will upgrade it to a rare, keeping all existing modifiers and adding 1 new modifier. Exalted Orbs will add 1 random modifier to a rare item up to a total of 6. So if you have used an Orb of Alchemy, or if you, for instance, have like regaled your way up and that, then you can add an extra either 2 modifiers or 3 modifiers from regaling. An Orb of Annulment can be used on magic or rare items, which will randomly remove 1 modifier from an item. A Chaos Orb can only be used on rare items, which will remove a random modifier, and then it will add a new random modifier. An Artificer's Orb can only be used on weapons or armor, and it will add a socket to a weapon or armor as well on that. And then with those sockets, you can add in ruins. An armorer's scrap will improve the quality of armor up to 20%, giving you more armor, evasion, or energy shield from the base itself. And then a blacksmith's whetstone does exactly the same thing for weapons, which will increase the amount of damage from the base damage that the weapon does have. Jeweler's Orbs are used on skill gems, which will add a socket to the gem, and it comes in 3 different tiers, which is a lesser for gems with 2 sockets, a greater is 3 sockets, and then perfect Jeweler Orbs is 4 sockets. And then lastly, a Vol Orb will corrupt an item with one of these effects, which will reroll up to 3 modifiers on the item, or it will add a corrupted implicit enchantment onto the item, which is above our original implicit, or it will add a socket ignoring the socket limit, which is really powerful. or it will do absolutely nothing. However, do just remember that when you use a Vol Orb, make sure that your item has got all of the modifiers filled up in that in terms of suffixes and prefixes, because it cannot be modified any further after you have used a Vol Orb on said item. For your advanced crafting currencies, essences are crafting items that guarantee specific modifier values and types. And these come in two different varieties, which is your regular essences, which can be used on normal items to upgrade them to a magic with the one guaranteed modifier. And then the greater essences will upgrade the magic item to a rare with one guaranteed modifier. I do believe that you can use a regular essence on an item and then a greater essence as well, and they will stack on top of each other. So say you want to guarantee a life roll and then a resistance roll, you can do so by using the two essences. I could be wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure that's how it is. And then for omens, they are special currency items obtained from ritual encounters, which allow you to modify other currencies. Only one omen can be active at a time, and the omen is consumed when it's triggered. So, for example, a omen of dextral annulment will force an orb of annulment to only remove suffix modifiers. So this is really, really good if you want to keep all of your prefixes and you've got like a really bad suffix that you would like to replace. And then an omen of sinistral exaltation forces an exalted orb to only add prefix modifiers. And a greater annulment makes a orb of annulment remove two modifiers instead of one. Catalysts are currency items obtained from breach encounters that will enhance specific modifier values on rings and amulets. These can add up to 20% quality to increase life or attack or like resistance modifiers and that, and it will replace any existing quality type on the item, and it can enhance modifiers beyond 20% quality on special breach rings, which will drop from breach encounters themselves. The information about ailments is currently unverified and there are conflicting sources, so this is to be taken with a grain of salt. So most importantly here, the ailment threshold is typically equal to a monster's life, and it's adjusted for unique monsters such as bosses, so that way you cannot perma-stun or perma-freeze them, basically rendering them absolutely useless in that. And then ailment damage can be scaled multiplicatively using ailment effect modifiers or indirectly by scaling the hit damage. So the bigger your hit damage, the more effective that your bleeds, poisons, ignites, or your shocks and freezes will be. Okay, so for bleeding, it deals 70% of the base physical hit damage per second for 5 seconds, and it will deal 210% damage if the target's moving, and only hits to life can inflict bleeding, so that means it bypasses energy shield. And it also does not stack, but multiple instances can exist with only the highest damage being active, and it can be aggravated to always treat the target as moving. I believe aggravated is through the skill tree somewhere. And then in terms of poison, it will deal 25% of the combined physical and chaos hit damage per second for 2 seconds. The default maximum stack size is 1, and all poison damage will bypass energy shield just like bleeding does. And then for ignites, it's also 25% of the fire hit damage for 4 seconds, and it does not stack. Only the highest damage instance is active, while 25% base chance to apply per 100% of enemy L threshold dealt. So by default, you'll have a 25% chance to ignite. And then for shock, it adds increased damage taken debuff to a target. It also does not stack, and only the highest effect instance will be active, while having a 25% chance base shock to apply per 100% of the enemy ailment threshold dealt as well. And then electrocute sets the action speed to 0, which immobilizes the target. I think this is going to work basically the same way as stuns, how I understand it. And lightning damage cannot inflict electrocute by default, so this can only be gained through other means, such as support gems, and I believe also maybe the skill tree. And then freeze is what reduces action speed to 0, basically rendering the target from performing any actions. And then freezes build up based on the cold damage out versus the ailment threshold. So once again, the bigger your hits, the more effective your freezes will be, and each freeze increases the target's ailment threshold against future freezes. So this is basically just diminishing returns, so you cannot permanently freeze enemies such as bosses. And then for stuns, it will interrupt the target's action when stun buildup exceeds a specific threshold, while physical and melee damage have higher stun buildup, obviously, and then a portion of buildup counts towards heavy stun for a much longer stun duration, and you cannot build up stun while the target is already stunned, once again, so you cannot permanently stun an enemy. Alright, moving on to the end game mechanics, finally. So, the Atlas of the Worlds is the primary end game system, which is basically just mapping as we know it in Path of Exile 1, which is unlocked after completing Act 3 on cruel difficulty, which is a infinite map system that will expand in all different directions, and that from the central Val Ziggurat. You will have to use waystones, which is the same as maps basically, to open portals to different locations with the goal of cleansing corruption, so you can progress through the Atlas. So for map progression, your blue portals show currently accessible maps, grey portals show potential progression paths, and then green portals show completed maps. You will need to complete a map by defeating all rare and unique monsters, and then obviously failed maps will become inaccessible and you will have to find an alternative path in that. I do believe that should you fail all of your maps within an area, there will be a fallback option on that. That way it won't fully prevent you from actually progressing. So don't worry about that. So waystones are required to enter maps, and it comes in tiers 1 through 16, the same way as mapping in Path of Exile 1, and higher tiers increase the monster level and rewards, obviously. And they can also be crafted with prefixes, which are beneficial, and then suffixes are the dangerous modifiers. The more dangerous suffixes increases the waystone drop chances as well, so this way you can progress quicker. Precursor towers, also known as the lost towers, are special structures that will reveal large areas of the Atlas when completed. That way you're able to see which direction you basically want to go, and you can also accept the tablets to add mechanics to nearby maps. While multiple towers can overlap effects on a single map, this is how basically we'll be juicing our maps now. We also have access to a Atlas passive tree, which you will gain Atlas passive points by completing maps, so you can customize your mapping experience with points spent on increased monster density, high chances of certain mechanics to appear, or just in general better rewards from specific content types and others as well. Each endgame mechanic, breach, ritual, and so forth has got its own specialized tree, so this way you can aim for exactly what content you want to do yourself within your maps. And then defeating pinnacle bosses will grant extra points for their respective trees, as the pinnacle bosses gain their own independent trees as well, so you can juice them up. Okay, quickly going over the endgame mechanics that you can find. The first one is breaches, which you can interact with a breach hand in a map to activate the breach by running over it. Active breaches will expand the circle and it will spawn a whole bunch of monsters. And the faster the monsters are killed, the faster the circle expands. So you need to keep killing monsters to keep the breach active. In terms of rewards, you will get breach tablets, which are used to add more breaches to the Atlas. Catalysts are to improve the quality on your rings and amulets and that. And then this is where you can get your breach rings, which are a special base type of rings that can have their own quality enhanced up to 50% instead of the usual 20%. I think this is going to be really, really crazy. And then in these breaches, you'll drop a bunch of breach splinters, which can be combined into a breach stone to access the twisted domain and challenge the pinnacle boss. For the pinnacle encounter, you will have to use the breach stone in the realm gate to open a portal to the twisted domain containing a single large breach. You'll have to complete this breach to fight the pinnacle boss called Gest. We who are one. The second in-game mechanic is a ritual. You'll find a bunch of ritual altars and that, and you'll have to kill monsters within the circle to feed it. and as you kill enemies in that, you will gain tribute. And for each consecutive ritual that you complete, the previously defeated monsters will be added to the next ritual. So the more rituals you do, the more enemies you'll end up having, and the more tribute you'll be able to gain, whereby you can exchange tribute for gear or even currency items. And then also you can defer items, meaning at a later stage you can acquire them should you have insufficient tribute to buy them. The rewards is also ritual tablets, which are used to add more rituals to the Atlas. And then omens can be bought as well. These are used to influence crafting outcomes and allow for meta crafting. For ritual, there is also a pinnacle encounter, so you can gain access to the crux of nothingness and fight the king of the mists. The exact mechanic to gain entry is currently unknown, and in PoE1, you could find an audience with the king as a reward from ritual altars. So I'm guessing that maybe there is like some form of splinters or something as well, like Breach probably, whereby you'll have to like gather up to be able to access the crux of nothingness. For the third endgame mechanic is Delirium, whereby you'll encounter a mirror of delirium, which will cover the area in a silvery mist. The mist will spawn additional monsters, and it makes all of the enemies both more dangerous and more rewarding. So the deeper you go through the mist and the more enemies you end up killing, the stronger the effect becomes. And monsters in the mist will deal more damage and take less damage the more you end up killing as well. So do just remember that it can end up becoming rather dangerous. For the rewards, we have also got Delirium tablets, which are used to add more Delirium encounters to the Atlas. And then Distilled Emotions can be used to install amulets with notable passives from the passive skill tree. So this works the same way as in Path of Exile 1, whereby we can anoint certain passives from the skill tree with oils, but now we are instead going to be using the Distilled Emotions. And we can also add layers of Delirium to maps via the Waystones, which is up to 3 layers. So we can juice our maps with layers of Delirium. And then, just like Breach, you can collect Simulacrum splinters that drop from the monsters. And once you combine 300 of these, you'll be able to create a Simulacrum whereby you can open it up into a realm gate to enter the pinnacle encounter, where you'll fight up to 15 waves of monsters, where each wave ends up getting much, much harder, but they do end up providing much more rewards. For the fourth endgame mechanic that you can expect to encounter is Expedition. You'll place a bunch of explosives which will detonate in a sequence, activating everything in the radius of each of the explosive charges. And this will activate the area, which is monsters, chests, and remnants. Remnants modify all of these subsequent explosions in the sequence, potentially increasing rewards more, but also making the monsters way more dangerous should you choose some iffy modifiers. The rewards is expedition tablets, which are used to add more expedition encounters to the Atlas, along with artifacts, which are the special currencies that can be traded with the Kalguran NPCs, whereby one of them is Danig, which trades other expedition currencies in that. This is so that you can get more currency for Gwenin, Tujin, or Rog, whereby Gwenin enables you to gamble artifacts for random items in that. And then Tujin will trade various currency types, and Rog offers special crafting services. During these expedition encounters and that, you can also drop logbooks, which are special map items containing large expedition encounters with multiple explosive sequences and that, which is their own independent area map. For the pinnacle encounter, you will have to run really high tier logbooks for a chance to encounter the pinnacle boss Olroth, and defeating him grants Atlas passive points that can also be used to enhance the expedition mechanic in its own separate tree. For the fifth endgame mechanic is the Trial of the Sekhemas, which is a roguelike dungeon consisting of 4 floors, which has got 8 rooms each. This is exactly basically the same as a Sanctum from Path of Exile 1, whereby instead of having life, you'll use honor as your primary resource. So taking damage reduces your honor, and running out of honor ends up failing the trial. So you basically don't want to get hit here. And each room also presents different challenges, like filling blood chalices, disabling death crystals, or surviving waves of monsters. That way you can progress through each room. And then you'll need to collect sacred water to purchase temporary buffs and recover honor between rooms and that. The rewards is time lost jewels, which is very special jewels that modify passive nodes within their radius on the skill tree. And then relics are craftable items that can provide buffs for future trial runs, making them more effective and easier on you. And then keys are to open reward caches. And then upon completing floors at certain level thresholds, you will have access to your ascendancy points. And then each floor ends with a boss fight, whereby floor 1 is Rattle Cage, floor 2 is Hardy of the Flaming River and Rafik of the Frozen Spring, and then floor 4 is Zaroka the Eternal. And then for our other trial, which is Ultimatum, which is an alternative to doing Trial of the Sekhemas. This is a gauntlet of increasing difficult challenge rooms. Each room will either require you to defeat waves of monsters, survive until a timer expires, or to escort a statue to its destination. After each room, the Trial Master will offer you a reward and 3 modifiers to choose from. Each modifier will persist through subsequent rooms, making the trial exponentially more challenging. So you do need to choose wisely as you are progressing. And then you need to complete up to 10 rounds for maximum rewards. But if you fail a single room, then you lose absolutely everything and you have to start from scratch. The rewards that you can expect is soul cores, whereby you can socket these into weapons and armor for powerful enchantments. And then Vol Orbs come from here as well, which allows you to corrupt items for powerful and unpredictable effects. And then you can also gain access to inscribed ultimatums, which is special trials that lets you wager items, whereby prefixes determine potential rewards like doubling sacrificed currency, or with suffixes that adds dangerous modifiers to the trial as well. For the pinnacle encounter, you'll have to collect 3 fates to unlock a Trial Master's tower and fight the Trial Master himself. Fates appear to be rewards from completing high difficulty trials, it seems. Alright, and that is it for this super long ass video. I hope you guys did enjoy it. And should you have enjoyed it, please do drop a like, maybe subscribe to my channel if you're not yet subscribed, and then also drop a follow on my Twitch channel. I will be live every single day while I am progressing through early access. Other than that, thanks for watching, Exile, and I'll see you in the next video or live stream.